Shalom, shalom, Israel. It's Brother Zaba Yalla
Brother Marquas.
coming back at you with another W5 history through the Spirit. All praises and honor and glory due to Yahweh by Hashem Yahweh Shah. Got to come back out and edify Israel another week. Just going into the history, going into the captivities that our people were in, the lifestyle, the things that going into just going into the life of our people in these different empires and understanding and the importance behind it, man. We have to go into these empires. We have to go into the history, the kings that was ruling around these times. This week is going to be the Babylonian Empire, right? Nebuchadnezzar, right? Everybody knows about Nebuchadnezzar in the scriptures. Well, shalom to everybody on the comment board, right? Nebuchadnezzar in the scriptures, all the different books relating to him and the prophecies as well. We're going to get into it through the Spirit. Right, but as you know, every week we got to pull up the scriptures, man. Starting off, kicking it off with the scriptures. Let me get a precept real quick. Share my screen. All right, let's get a precept real quick, man. I'm going to Revelations 1 and verse 3. We got to read these things, understand these things. You can't just read, just read the Bible. You always in Psalms, you just want to feel good for today. The Bible has a lot of history in it, a lot of things, a lot of prophecy, a lot of things we got to go into that we got to understand as the children of the Most High. That He allowed us to that He allowed us to see. Is Revelations 1 and 3. Blessed is he that readeth, and they that hear the words of this prophecy. And there are certain prophecies relating to the captivity of Babylon, right? Even doublefold, right, relating to this damn Babylonian empire. And it says, and keep those things which are written therein, for the time is at hand. Let me also get another one, Romans chapter 15, because our forefathers that lived in these captivities or lived or survived during these times, their estate wasn't that much more different from us being under servitude. So the way they lived and maneuvered, we had to take those same things and apply it. But we want to get in depth as much as we can to help paint a picture of how our forefathers lived. It's Romans 15 and 4. For whatsoever things are written aforetime are written for our learning, and that we through patience and comfort of the scriptures might have hope. Right? And why would these things give us hope? Why would being in a Babylonian empire gives us hope? Right? The reason why it gives us hope is because why? Seeing our forefathers live during those times, us in captivity, them in captivity, and they were still found righteous and perfect before the Most High. And then that means, guess what? We have hope that we can be found righteous and perfect before the Most High. But you got it, King.
Yeah, that's right. Let's go to Malachi chapter 2 and verse number 12. Right, and like how we reiterate, all the time, these things, like the brother said, is run for our learning and for our understanding. And these things that we learn about, the Babylonian Empire and all these different empires, we actually learned about it in school. When I was in elementary school, middle school, high school, they teach you about these different empires, but they never teach you what a so-called Black and Hispanic man was at during these different empires. See, we learn about these other empires. All you're doing is learning about their history and what they did, not even knowing that as they're magnifying themselves by going into their own history, you was in the midst of it. All right, the so-called Black and Hispanic man is so unique because throughout everyone's history, you're gonna find somehow you're gonna find a Jake, right? Somehow you're gonna find a someone that go back to Judah, that go back to Issachar with this name and with that name. And that's what make us, and that's one of the things that make our people special is that no matter where you at in history, you're going to find a so-called Black or Hispanic man, right, an Israelite. So let's go to Malachi chapter 2 and verse 12. It says, the Lord will cut off the man that doeth this, the master and his scholar. So in according to prophecy, the Most High, he cut out the scholars out of Israel. All right, at one point in time, we had many, scholars. We had elders that knew the law, that knew the history, that knew these books, that was able to teach us and bring this out and bring that out and link this up and link that up. But guess what? All throughout time, throughout slavery, throughout colonization, it says the Lord will cut off the man that doeth this, the master, which is a teacher, and the scholar. It says out of the tabernacles of Jacob, and him that offereth an offering unto the Lord of hosts, going into the Levites. So the Most High, he cut out the scholars, he cut out the masters, he cut out the teachers out of Israel. Why did he do that? For our iniquities and our sins. But through his grace and through his mercy, again, you have these different things that's being revealed in the last days. With the grace and mercy of the Most High is having the Spirit come upon his servants to go into this history that you're not gonna learn nowhere else. The church is not gonna teach you. School systems not gonna teach you this. Whatever place you go to, no matter how much money you pay, no matter how much damn tuition you put into it, they will never teach you your true history to the fullest. But that's why we had a Bible, the words of the Most High, and these records and this history to go into it to righteously divide the word of truth. Now let's go to 2 Timothy 2 and verse 15. All right, let's go to 2 Timothy, the classic, chapter 2, and verse number 15. Right. And it reads, right, 2 Timothy chapter 2 and verse 15. It says, study to show thyself approved unto the Most High, a workman that needeth not to be ashamed, rightly dividing the word of truth. And to rightly divide the word of truth, you have to know the word and its, for lack of better terms, you have to know the word in its fullest, in the whole. All right, you can't just know the precepts and then not know the context to the precepts by proving it with the history. You can't just know the history, have no precepts to back up what you're claiming. You can't know, all this and not have a just balance to back it up with another source. So the Most High, again, has commanded us to rightly divide the word of truth and to be studied. Because, again, you're liable to have any question from anywhere come about you. So that's why it's important to go into this history. Let's go to 2 Timothy chapter 3 and verse 1 and not be a novice. When Paul was writing to Timothy, he even told Timothy you can't be a novice. I believe that's 2 Timothy 3 and 1. Went into the bishops. Or maybe 1 Timothy. Kind of believe it's 1 Timothy chapter 3 and verse number 1. Right? It reads 1 Timothy 3 and verse 1. This is a true saying. If any man desire the office of a bishop, he desireth to go work. A bishop then must be blameless, the husband of one wife, vigilant, sober, and of good behavior, given to hospitality. It's the point, apt to teach. Right? It says apt to teach. And in order to be apt to teach, you have to know things by by diving into it. A lot of Jake, you do a lot of surface research. You watch a short or two, right? And you run with that. Jake, he watched 3 shorts about Egyptology. Now you think that's the truth. All right, Jake, he watching, shorts on white Jesus. All right, he watching shorts on Ganesh and all these different gods and all these different, false religions. You got Jake, he watching shorts on how slave ships was never a thing. Now all of a sudden he believing. Now all of a sudden every so-called black man is what they say, aboriginal.
Yeah.
And Jake, he get that off short. So the Most High, he commanded us to what? Be apt to teach. That goes back to 2 Timothy 2 and 15, the instructions that the Apostle Paul is giving to Timothy so he can better lead and guide the church. Jumping down to verse number, let me see what I want. Jumping down to verse number, all right. So let me jump down. 2 Timothy or 1 Timothy chapter 3. All right, let's go to verse. I believe I said on that.
Come.
Go to verse 6. Go to verse 6. All right, verse 6, it says, it's the point as well. It says, not a novice, lest being lifted up with pride, he fall into condemnation of the devil. Right? You can't be a novice in this thing. Now, you can start as a novice, but you want to increase, and you increase by making your ways diverse and proving the words of the Most High in different ways, But you got it.
Come. Yeah, man. I had my brother in the world. He started, watching TikTok videos. He came to me with the doctrine that the Edomites are reptilians, man. And he swears up and down that they're reptilians, and you can't tell him different. And if you try to tell him different, he gonna get angry, man. Because, like I said, Jake, they confident in what they read and what they believe in, in folly, but they don't really do any, real searching or real studying, man, into these different things. Like you say, you watch 3 TikTok videos and now you know everything. No, you got to actually go into the history and dive into this history. And like the brother said, not be a novice, man. Understand the words of life. You said what?
I was gonna say they got those conspiracy pages on Instagram, man. Jake, he followed them, man. So okay, the white meat really reptilian. You see his eyes. You see when he turned his eyes, got the scales, and they try to
Yeah, you just under
just
your
believe it.
blankets. Man. You said what?
And I was gonna say, yeah, they just believe in anything, man. Just whatever they see, they just go with it. That's how you know we went off in Egypt. They just seen all this gold and said, let's make a calf and serve it. Not just going off. But you got it.
Yeah, yeah, man. Jake, like say, you just under your blankets, laying on your stomach with your blankets over your head, just scrolling, eyes getting big, just lusting after vanity. But
Pseudo knowledge.
this Psalms 119, 111, and it says, "Thy testimonies have I taken as a heritage forever, for they are the rejoicing of my heart." And we have to be in the spirit. Thy testimonies. What does the word testimonies mean? All right, let's go into it. Go into the word testimonies. Testimony, witnesses or witness. All right, can you hear this, King? Let me know if you can hear this one.
La.
You can hear it?
La.
All right, calm. So yeah, it goes into a testimony, right? Or a witness. So witnesses are the different men that live during these different time periods to attest to what the Most High is saying is actually true. And we have to go, like I said, when we go into the history, we go into these witnesses. Who's a witness? Ezekiel's a witness during the Babylonian Empire. It actually happened. We're going to go into the archaeology, right? Judith, right? You read the story of the book of Judith. She was a witness. Isaiah prophesied about this. So you have many witnesses that lived. Jeremiah wrote the book of Lamentations. Baruch. These are all witnesses, right? Going into that this empire happened and that we were in captivity during these times. But we can hop into it. Come on. First one, Revolt of Babylon. Oh, you got it.
Khan. So you got something. Now, last week we went over the Assyrian Empire. I went over, a majority of the Assyrian kings from the Neo-Assyrian Empire, namely the ones that's written of in the Bible. Sennacherib, Shalmaneser, Sargon II, etc. So after that time period of them reigning, I want to get a quick precept. I want to go to Sirach, the 10th chapter. Right, I want to go to Sirach, the 10th chapter, real quick to show that the power shift, whatever the Most High does according to his heart, he's going to fulfill that counsel. And with that, the power shift, the Most High always causes things to change. So let's go to Sirach chapter 10 and verse number 8. We'll go to start at verse 7. It says, "Pride is hateful before the Most High, and man, and by both does one commit iniquity, because of unrighteous dealings and riches gotten by deceit. The kingdom is translated from one people to another." So the Most High, he translated the kingdom from one people, from one race, from one empire, from one rulership to another. The Most High has a long history of doing it. All right, no kingdom is just going to reign forever. There's only one kingdom that's prophesied to reign forever, and that's the kingdom of the Most High. Other than that, every carnal kingdom and all these kings, they have a set date to where they begin to reign, then they have a fall. All right, let's go to Job 34 and 29. Let's go to Job 34 and verse 29. Right, and it reads, "When he giveth quietness, who then can make trouble? And when he hideth his face, who then can behold him? Whether it be done against a nation or against a man only." And the Most High, what he does is he judges nations by a whole. He's not going to just remove one king and set up another king all the time. No, the Most High, he removes nations, he gets men out of there, he gets kingdoms out of there, and he replaces kingdoms. So we can go back to the article real quick. And you read about the transition from the empire unto the Neo-Babylonian Empire. Now, the reason why it's called the Neo-Babylonian Empire, Neo meaning new. You have an ancient Babylonian Empire, right, that you read about all the way back to the book of Genesis. And do you have a Neo-Babylonian Empire where the empire came back into rulership? So it says the Revolt of Babylon. Now, to kind of backtrack, when we went over Assyria, they had all this land covered up right through the kingdoms that they ruled over. Babylon was one of those kingdoms, right? So as Babylon was in subjection under the Assyrian Empire, the Most High had all nations chose Babylon to revolt. So the Revolt of Babylon in 626 BC refers to the revolt of General Nebuchadnezzar and his war of independence until the successfully consolidation control of Babylonia in 620 BC, defeating the Neo-Assyrian Empire, which had ruled Babylon for more than a century. It says the revolt saw the information of the Neo-Babylonian Empire and was one of the key factors contributing to the fall of Assyria. 20 years after the revolt had begun, Nebuchadnezzar's army and that of its ally, Cyaxares of the Medes, had destroyed the Neo-Assyrian Empire. So you have within the revolt of Babylon, right? They had their help from the Medes, the Median Empire, right, with Cyaxares. So both of them, they came up together, all right, and they both overthrew the kingdom of Assyria. It says, I'm gonna read the next background. It says since the Neo-Assyrian Empire had conquered Babylon, right, in 729 BC under Tiglath-Pileser III. Right now, we actually went over Tiglath-Pileser on the last video. I believe that was the third as well. So we touched on that the last video, Tiglath-Pileser. It says the Assyrian kings had pledged by the Babylonian problem, quote unquote, regular rebellions in the south aimed to restore independence, despite many attempts by the Assyrian kings to resolve this issue, such as Sennacherib's destruction of Babylon and Esarhaddon's restoration of it. Rebellions and insurrections remained common. The revolt of 626 was only the last in a long line of Babylonian upspringing against the Syrians. So Babylon, out of all the countries, they the ones that chose up to revolt. And once the Medes began to see the Babylonians fighting back to get their power back, and I believe when you read one of the articles, you can scroll down a little bit more. I believe they attacked the two chiefest cities. Right, you have the Medes, they attacked the city of Ashur, one of the chief cities. And the Babylonians, they end up attacking Nineveh, which was their capital. So both empires, they had this strategy to take down both chief cities, right? And when you take down the chief cities, that's when that rulership kind of overturned. Let me see if they said it in this article. Reading on, let me see if they got that in here. All right, it says, I'm going to start at the second paragraph to get right to the point. It says on November 22nd or /23rd, 626 BC, Nebuchadnezzar was formerly known as King of Babylon. The Syrians, having failed to capture and kill him, which restored Babylonia as an independent kingdom after more than a century of the Assyrian rule. Sennacherib, this is a crazy name, right? Sennacherib's forces, at the middle one, right? Sennacherib's forces, starting at 3. Sennacherib's forces campaigned in northern Babylonia 625 to 623, and though intentionally successful, taking the city of Sampar and defeating Nebuchadnezzar's attempt, it says reconquest Zippor. So I can't remember which paragraph it was in. I want to stand it all day. Nevertheless, you had this the Medes, they take down Ashur, and the Babylonians, they take down Nineveh. That's where you get the Battle of Nineveh from, which is the decisive battle that took place around 626, and another one in 612 BC, where Babylon officially overcame the Assyrian Empire. Right, but you got it. And I actually want to get a quick precept on that, actually. I want to go to the book of Judith to show that. I want to go to the book of Judith. All right, let's get this quick precept. It's the second chapter.
Come.
Quick. All right, it's the book of Judith, chapter 4. No, chapter 2 and verse number 1. You can start at verse 1. Judith chapter 2 and verse 1. It says, in the 18th year, the 18th year, the 20th day of the first month, there was a talk in the house of Nebuchadnezzar, king of the Assyrians, that he should, as he said, avenge himself on all the earth. So we're going to get into Nebuchadnezzar, but nevertheless, Nebuchadnezzar was the son of Nabopolassar, but he's the king of Babylon. So you see right here, it calls him the king of Assyria, is because the Babylonians, they revolted against the Assyrians. After they revolted against the Assyrians, whatever kingdom you take over, you're known as that king. So through the spirit, we read the book of Judith. You read a lot how Nebuchadnezzar is called the king of Assyria. A lot of people think, okay, that's a contradiction, or what's going on? Is he the king of Assyria? Is he the king of Babylon? No, he took over Assyria. And he's over the Babylonian rulership. So in the eyes of the Assyrians, he was known as the king of the Assyrians. All right, reading on, it says, so he called unto his officers and all his nobles, communicated with them his secret counsel, and concluded the afflicting of the whole earth out of his own mouth. It says, then they decreed to destroy all flesh that did not obey the commandment of his mouth. So, Lord, we can get more into this, but staying on point, the Assyrians, they end up falling at the Battle of Nineveh, 612 BC. I want to get that precept. Let's go to the book of Tobit. All right, let's go to Tobit, chapter 12. Or chapter 14, rather, in the last verse. Right, and Jonah actually prophesied the downfall of Nineveh through the Spirit. So this Tobit, chapter 14 and verse 15, it says, but before he died, he heard of the destruction of Nineveh, right, which was taken by Nebuchadnezzar and Ashurus. And before his death, he rejoiced over Nineveh. And Tobit actually was able to see, Nabopolassar, Nebuchadnezzar actually take down the same kingdom that oppressed his people through the Spirit. And when you see that, he kind of rejoiced. So when you read in this history book and, you're going on these different sites and you look at things up, you also want to know which prophet was alive during which time. So around this time of Nineveh being destroyed, 612 BC, 626, with all these wars and rebellion and revolts, Tobit was living during this time. Jonah was living during this time as well. But you got it.
Come. Yeah, that's exactly right. You have a lot of contemporaries in the scriptures, that lived at the time and that lived during these different times and prophesied during these different times. That was actually in these captivities, right? Seeing it firsthand, and we have firsthand accounts of what it was to be like in these captivities with which king was ruling, right? To kind of give a synopsis, right? Let me get another precept. Let me actually go back to that in Judith, right? Because like the brother said, he was named the king of the Assyrians because he was taking down the Assyrians during this time, starting with Nabopolassar, then transferring the crown to Nebuchadnezzar, his elder son. Right, go to Judith chapter 1 and verse. I'm starting verse 10. I'm starting verse 9. And then we're going to get into the campaigns that happened around Mesopotamia in the Levant, right, where you had Nabopolassar taking down the Philistines, right, warring with Egypt at the time for border control right, until they made a pact basically saying, okay, well, these are the bounds, right? So we're going to get into these different scriptures and to prove these different things, right? This is the book of Judith, chapter 1 and verse 12. And it says, I'll start at verse 10, until you come beyond Tanis and Memphis into all the inhabitants of Egypt, until you come to the borders of Ethiopia, right? So right now, like the brother said, they're going to this council. And it says, but all the inhabitants of the land made light of the commandment of Nebuchadnezzar, king of the Assyrians, because he took down Nineveh, but now he's going. If you look on the map where Nineveh, Assyria is, that's like northwest of Israel. So let me even show you. Kind of want to get into this real quick. Nineveh images. All right. I gotta probably pull it up in another tab and make it a lot bigger. Can you see this?
Oh yeah, that's good right there.
So he took down this, but he had Nebuchadnezzar didn't take down he didn't take down anything past the Euphrates yet. He didn't take down the Philistines. He didn't take down Ishmael. He didn't even take down Israel, and he wasn't there with Egypt yet. So he made a commandment basically saying, I took down Nineveh. The rest of you nations on this side, right over here, the rest of you nations, hey, bow down to me. But they made light of his commandment. That's what started his campaign going through Moab, going through Ammon, going through Edom, going through Egypt, going through the Philistines, going through Ishmael, and then or the Arabs, and then going through Israel as well. On the other side of the Tigris, the other side of the Euphrates. We got to understand this. That's why he said that. We can go back to Judith until you come beyond Tanis and Memphis to all the inhabitants of Egypt, till you come to the borders of Ethiopia. But all the inhabitants of the land made light of the commandment of Nebuchadnezzar, king of the Assyrians, neither went they with him to battle, for they were not afraid of him, because they didn't really know him. He's all the way over there in the east. Yea, he was before them as one man, and they sent away his ambassadors from them without effect and with disgrace. Therefore, Nebuchadnezzar was very angry with all this country and swore by the throne and kingdom that he would surely be avenged upon all the coast of Cilicia, Damascus, Syria. These are all the nations, right? Moab and the children of Ammon and all Judea. That's all the nations over here. They made light of his commandment because they didn't know who this guy was. He's the new guy on the scene. He the new kid on the block. He said, yeah, I just defeated the bully, so all y'all bow down to me. They basically just did this. Shut up. And they threw a can at his head, man. And sent back to him. But when we understand, now that we understand that, and it says, and all that were in Egypt, till you come to the borders of the two seas, right? Then he marched in battle array with his power against King Arphaxad in the 17th year, and he prevailed in this battle, and for he overthrew all the power of Arphaxad, his horsemen, on all his chariots, and that's what led him to start his campaigns going around. It wasn't just Israel being taken down; he was taking down all these nations. He was causing fear on the earth, man. The Most High had him do that, right? But this goes to show you that, yeah, I mean, these different books with our forefathers and foremothers living in kind of gives you a firsthand account of what was happening. Right? Let me get one more precept and we can go back to the article.
I got a precept after you to let me back off that Judith, the first chapter.
This is Ezekiel chapter 17. And I'm going to start at verse number 12. Actually, let me go to the book and I'm going to get that for the Battle of Carchemish. This is Ezekiel chapter 17 and verse 12. And it says, verse 11. Moreover, the word of the Lord came unto me, saying, say now to the rebellious house, know you not what these things mean? Tell them, behold, the king of Babylon has come to Jerusalem. Nebuchadnezzar has come to Jerusalem and have taken the king thereof and the princes thereof and led them with him to Babylon. Right, talking about Zedekiah, right, and his sons. Right, but nonetheless, you have a prophecy of going into King Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, doing this into our fathers in Jerusalem. And like I said, we go into the book of Judith, that shows how his campaign even started coming over to the west. What you got it? So we can get back into it.
Tanya, I got a point. Let me backing off Judith, the first chapter. We read Judith, the first chapter, and Judith, the second chapter. I believe the third chapter as well. All you read is about the conquest of Nebuchadnezzar and all these different provinces that he took over. You know, he kind of had he kind of remind me of Alexander the Great. He had that type of spirit. He just want to take over everything and rule everything. You know, that lust of just blood and, you know, just all this killing. So I'm going to read Isaiah chapter 15. So when we read Judith, the first chapter, read about, you know, and this will take us all day to go through every nation. But you read about Moab and you read about all these nations. Isaiah, he prophesied the downfall of Moab and Ammon and all these other nations by the hand of Nebuchadnezzar, by the hand of the Most High, talking about Nebuchadnezzar. All right, we read in how Moab, they went on this long, what's the word I'm looking for? On this journey when they migrated from the land of Moab to China, where they at now. The one that pushed them out that land of Moab was actually Nebuchadnezzar, right? Along with Ammon as well. And they took a lot of the Gadites with them too. Because Gad was on the border of Moab and Ammon. We go into the history, they mingled a lot. So we know when Nebuchadnezzar came in, he pushed out Moab, he pushed out Ammon, and some of the Gadites that dwelt in that land. That's how you get that big old migration, you know, that Mongolian and all this hidden up history that's, that's not accounted for, quote unquote. Nevertheless, this Isaiah 15 and verse 1. It says the burden of Moab, because the night of Ar of Moab is laid waste and brought to silence, because and the night of Ker of Moab is laid waste and brought to silence. He has gone up to Bajath and of Dibon, the high places, to weep. Moab shall howl over Nebo and over Medeba, and all their heads, right, shall be baldness, and every beard cut off. So when we read that, that's going into the prophecy of Nebuchadnezzar and the Babylonians coming over and destroying Moab. And a lot of these prophecies that you read about in Isaiah in context, they're going into what the things that Nebuchadnezzar did to these nations. Now, I'm going to say the rest for the other nations we get into. But we can go back to the article if you ain't got it.
Con.
Let's go down to aftermath.
Mm-hmm.
I really want to touch on what Cyraxes and when they take down the shore, but they may not have it on this site. But it says, I'm gonna read the second paragraph at the aftermath. It says in October 615 BC, the Medes. It says another ancient enemy of Assyria, right? Like how we touched on the Medes and the Babylonians. Another ancient enemy of Assyria under King Cyraxes entered Assyria and conquered the region around the belt of, let's say, Arphatza. Right, let me screen. Khan. We didn't know what it says. Khan, yeah. It says in preparation for a great final campaign against Sinsharnikon. In July or August 614 BC, the Medes mounted attacks on the cities of Kalhu and Nineveh, successfully conquered the city of Tarbisu. It says they besieged Ashur. See that? They besieged Ashur, which is one of the chief capitals. It says the siege, right? The siege was successful, and the Medes captured the ancient hearts of Assyria. So Ashur was one of the ancient hearts of Assyria, meaning the chief city. All right, one of its main cities, the heart of it. Kind of like how DC is to America. All right, how Chicago is to Illinois, your chief capital. That's what they took over. It says plundering and killing many of its inhabitants. Nebuchadnezzar only arrived at Ashur after the plunder had already begun, and met with Cyraxes, aligned with them, and signing an anti-Assyrian pact. Shortly after Ashur's fall, Sinsharnikon made his last attempt at the counterattack, rushing to rescue the besieged city of Ralu, but Nebuchadnezzar's army had retreated before battle and could not take place. It says in April or May 612 BC, at the start of Nebuchadnezzar's 14th year as king of Babylon, the combined Medo-Babylonian army marched on Nineveh, and from June to August of the year, they besieged the Assyrian capital, and in August, the walls were breached, leading to a lengthy and brutal sack. 4 years later, 609 BC, the Medo-Babylonian forces decisively defeated the last Assyrian king, Ashur Abimelech II, and then the Neo-Assyrian Empire. And that's how you get that shift change in power through these different battles and these decisive wars right here. All right, we go to the next article.
Con. That's exactly right. And like I said, it kicked it off with Nebuchadnezzar, right? With the taking down of the Assyrians with the Medes. Right? They were aligned, they were allies right? It's another article kind of proving the same thing, right? And it says the Neo-Babylonian Empire, ancient Middle Eastern empire, right, with its capital at Babylon, it dominated much of Southwest Asia from shortly after its founding in 626 BCE until the defeat of the final king by Persian King Cyrus the Great, which we're going to get into, right? And scroll down, historical overview, right? And it says Nebuchadnezzar, likely a member of the ruling family of the Uruk, seized the throne in Babylon in 626, right? 626. All right, and it says in inaugurating a dynasty that was described by later biblical and classical authors Chaldean. And no, so he, like the brother said, he kicked off the Neo-Babylonian empire, not the old ancient one, but the Neo-Babylon, right? Known in modern scholarship as Neo-Babylonian. And then by 1616, he had conquered the rest of Babylonia, a region that stretched from around the area from what is now Baghdad to the Persian Gulf. Let me see if I got a map pulled up. Let me see if I got a map pulled up. I'll put up Nineveh. Let me see. Right. So he really conquered this area over here. And that's how, and then it kind of spread it out right along the sides of here. Right. But it really started down here. Right. Just kind of give that visual. But it says a region that stretched from around what is now Baghdad to the Persian Gulf in the years that followed the attacks in Syria, with Median and later Scythian support, and sacked Nineveh. So he had allies in this thing. I mean, that goes all the way back to ancient warfare. America and all these nations, they link up to take down another nation. There's nothing new under the sun. But I mean, he didn't start off by himself. He started off with the Medes and the Scythians, right? And then you have the Assyrian capital being taken down in 612 BC, right? The Battle of Nineveh, right? And it says the Neo-Assyrian Empire met its end, or shortly after 610, with the defeat of Ashur-uballit II and his Egyptian allies at Haran in Egypt, which had expanded its influence, and it says Palestine, really Israel, during around the Levant. An Assyrian power there had wanted became the primary adversary of the fighting Neo-Babylonian Empire. Nebuchadnezzar's elder son, Nebuchadnezzar II, also spelled Nebuchadnezzar, named after the king Nebuchadnezzar I of the unrelated second dynasty of Sin. That's the old ancient Babylonian Empire. He named himself after, who had lived centuries earlier, led the Babylonian forces in the Levant. The Levant is Israel, right? That's the Levant, connecting from Egypt, Africa, right, to Syria, right? The Levant, that's Israel. That's that passageway. So that's what he's really known for, is taking down our people, Jerusalem. And we're going to get into the history, and we're going to get into archaeology of proof that actually happened. Now, leading to the Battle of Carchemish, in 605, Nebuchadnezzar crushed the Egyptian forces near Carchemish in a cruel, bloody battle and pursued them into the south, on receiving news of his father's death shortly afterward, because his father was actually warring with the Philistines and warring with Egypt for that border control, or over the Levant. Everybody wants to possess Israel. It's a fertile land. Right. And it says, on receiving news of his father's death shortly afterward, he returned immediately to Babylon to secure his throne. Right. The Babylonian Chronicle, a cuneiform, right, tablet that records a number of important events in Neo-Babylonian history, covers the year 605 to around 594. Let me jump down real quick. All right. Just to kind of show you. And then we're going to get into the Battle of Carchemish. And it says it records a number of campaigns into the Levant, right, where Nebuchadnezzar took Ashkelon, right? So Ashkelon is the chief city of the Philistines, right? The chief city of the Philistines. It's about 20 something. It's about, I would say, about 17, 18 years before Israel's taken down, right? And fought against both the Egyptians and the Arabs between 601 and 598, and put down a revolt in Jerusalem in 597, right? Because there was a revolt around that time, around 597, and then it was taken down again 11 years later under Zedekiah in 586. And who had that revolt? That's when Zedekiah came into power. So he put down that revolt. But there was warring with the Egyptians and the Arabs, right, in the Levant, also with the Philistines. And let me get a precept real quick to kind of substantiate that. Right, and then we can kind of happen to the Battle of Carchemish after this precept to kind of show now, when we read First Esdras or we read 2 Kings 23, why Josiah went out to fight with the king of Pharaoh of Egypt. Right, it's First Esdras chapter 1 You know, and like I said, this history makes the scriptures makes a lot more sense. All right. This first Ezra chapter 1, and I'm gonna start at verse talking about Josiah, verse 25. Now, after all these acts of Josiah, it came to pass that Pharaoh, the king of Egypt, came to raise war at Carchemish upon Euphrates, and Josiah's went out against him. So why was the king of Egypt going all the way up, waging war at Carchemish upon Euphrates? Who was he fighting? Now, if you understand the historical context and understand that Josiah was right before the fall of Babylon, right before the fall of Jerusalem, because the Lord had mercy on Josiah, saying, you know what, he's not going to see the fall of his people. He's going to be able to be gathered with his fathers. That was a prophecy concerning Josiah. So he didn't see the fall of Jerusalem, but his kids seen it. Zedekiah, Jehoiakim, changed his name from Eliakim, Jehoahaz. They were part of that experience. So during this time, 20-something years before, who was Pharaoh warring against? He was warring against the king of Babylon. He was warring against Nebuchadnezzar, and Josiah went out against him, right? And Josiah went out against him, but the king of Egypt said unto him, saying, what have I to do with thee, O king of Judah? I am not sent out from the Lord God against thee, for my war is upon Euphrates. Because who was upon Euphrates? Nebuchadnezzar. Right? He crossed that Euphrates, man. He sent out them. We read it. He sent out the ambassadors. They didn't listen to him. Now he came over reaping hell. And now they scrambling, all these nations scrambling together to fight him. But guess what? You know, they didn't win. Right? And it says, and now the Lord God is with me. Yea, the Lord is with me, hasten me forward. Depart from me and be not against the Lord. Howbeit Josiah did not turn back his chariot from him, but undertook to fight with him, not regarding the words of the prophet Jeremiah, spoken by the mouth of the Lord, but joined battle with them in the plain of Megiddo. And the princes came against Josiah. Then said the king unto his servants, carry me away out of the battle, for I'm very weak. And immediately his servants took him away out of the battle. So Josiah tried to wage war at that time, but it wasn't time for that to happen yet. Right? That's why the Lord kind of gathered together with his fathers, and his children got to see the destruction of Jerusalem, right? In the revolt that happened. And then his sons, you know, kind of being brought to the worst before Nebuchadnezzar. So now you can kind of, when you're reading the scriptures, you can kind of put together the setting, what was going on, who was warring, and why it happened once you dive into the history. Right now, we can go into the battle. We can, you know, kind of chill right here and kind of go into the battle of Carchemish. Oh, you got it, King.
Con. So, yeah, let's dive into that. All right, so the Battle of Carchemish. I'm gonna start at the top. It says, near the Battle of Carchemish, 605 BC, when the Babylonian decisively defeated the Egyptians and the remnant of the Assyrians, Jeremiah delivered an oracle against Egypt, realizing that this battle made a great difference in the world situation. Jeremiah soon, right? It's like that word kind of blurry. Jeremiah soon kind of dedicated to his scribe Baruch a scroll. I don't know, my screen kind of, it's like blurry on my end.
Let me scroll up.
I don't know if it's my internet going out.
Yeah,
right, but I'm gonna get a quick precept though. Let's go to Jeremiah the 46th chapter, verse number 1.
Yeah, you can bring it out because my computer kind of going slow.
Okay, God. Right, it's the book of Jeremiah 46 and verse 1, touching on the battle of Carchemish. So when you read about these different battles and these different names and labels in the Bible, you know, 9 times out of 10 they're gonna be written within, you know, somewhere history. You don't want to read a word, you know, they fought at Carchemish and you just let that go over your head. They fought at Megiddo and that just go over your head. You know, these different things, 9 times out of 10, they're actual battles that you read about, you know, in history. So this is Jeremiah 46 and verse number 1. It says, the word of the Lord, which came to Jeremiah the prophet against the Gentiles, against Egypt, right? Like how we read about, against the army of Pharaoh Necho. Right now, we read this man, Pharaoh Necho. This is Pharaoh Necho II. All right, the man that killed Josiah. It says, the king of Egypt, which was by the river Euphrates in Carchemish. See that which was by the river Euphrates and Carchemish. That's what you get the battle of Carchemish from. It says, which Nebuchadnezzar, the king of Babylon, smote in the 4th year of Jehoiakim, the son of Josiah, king of Judah. So, like how the brother said, I want to go to 2 Kings, the 23rd chapter. Right? You read about how Josiah, he actually got killed by Pharaoh Necho within battle at the battle of Carchemish. We had this major war, and this is a major war right here. You have a lot of major powers. You have Israel, all right, you have Egypt, you have Babylon, and you have Assyria.
Hey,
This is a big. Go ahead.
hey, I want to say, hey, yeah, like the brother, this ain't no fly by night small wars and people would no, everybody losing their mind. Moab, Ammon, Assyria's down, the Syrians, the Philistines, the Egyptians, the Ethiopians, and Israel. One man was taking down these nations and was giving them hell. You know, but you got it.
Yeah, it is like, damn, what's it called? It's slipping my mind. It's like the Big Four where you watch college football. All right, only the top 4 teams get to make it. You know, whatever your record was throughout the year, only the top 4 you get to see in the semifinals and the finals. It's like that spirit right here. You don't get no low level, no low level damn empires. You don't see the Medes in there. You don't see about the Philistines in there. You got Israel, God's chosen people. You got the Babylonians that's coming to prove something, led by Nebuchadnezzar. You got Assyria, who is just ruling. You got Egypt. Egypt always up there when it comes to the top empire, no matter what dynasty it is. For some reason, Egypt is always in the midst of it. This is a big deal right here. You said what?
They like Duke and UNC. They always there. They always just
right. They always there in the midst. God's chosen people against these top kingdoms right here. So if you was to put your mindset in this time period, that's when we read the article. It said world changing. Yeah, all these big empires going at it. But nevertheless, this is the book of 2 Kings, chapter 23 and verse. I start at verse number 28. Let's go to 2 Kings 23. Let's go to verse 28. It says, now the rest of the acts of Josiah and all that he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Judah? It says, in the days of Pharaoh Necho, king of Egypt, went up against the king of Assyria to the river Euphrates. And not only that, the river Euphrates, that's a big hotspot too. Not only that they, have this big battle, but they had it in a big hotspot. In this battle, it's a foreshadowing of World War II. Because all the nations are going to be at the river Euphrates, pursuing a revelation. I believe that's the 16th chapter. Reading on, it says, and the king Josiah went up against him and slew him. Read that again. And King Josiah went up against him, and he slew him at Megiddo when he had seen him, and his servants carried him in a chariot dead from Megiddo. So Josiah actually ended up getting killed, destroyed by Pharaoh Necho. When you read this chapter, you read the context, the Most High put on this Pharaoh spirit to tell Josiah, hey, don't come up against me. Your God, he's going to have me destroy you if you do this. And, Josiah, he didn't listen. He went up there and he ended up getting destroyed through the spirit. Nevertheless, that shows that these different battles that you see within the Bible, you also see them throughout history. And this battle is all throughout history. I believe you read it in First Esdras as well. I should read it in 2 Chronicles. You read it in Jeremiah, the 46th chapter. Why? Because this battle is a big deal, man. And during this battle, you have all these nations warring against each other, trying to get the top power and trying to stop Babylon from taking over the world. So we go back to the article real quick.
Yeah, these people were losing their mind.
Yeah, everybody was crashing out at this time.
Sent Ammon and Moab over to China and Japan, but that's some history for a later day. We ain't gonna say too much on that. You got it.
All right. Reading on. Reading on, it says, I'm starting at background. Right, when the Syrian capital, we kind of went over that. I'll read it again. Right, when the Assyrian capital of Nineveh was overrun by the Medes, Scythians, Babylonians, and their allies in 612 BC, the Assyrians moved their capital to Haran. When Haran was captured by the alliances in 609 BC, ended the Assyrian Empire, remnants of the Assyrian army joined Carchemish, a city under Egypt rule. It says of the Euphrates. Egypt, a former vassal of Assyria, was allied with Assyrian king Ashur, uh, Ashur Abelard II, and marched in 609 BC to its aid against the Babylonians. It's the point. It says the Egyptian army, Pharaoh Necho II. Now, can you click that name real quick? Pharaoh Necho II. And we go into these different pharaohs in the Egyptian empire, they have, many dynasties. All right, so when you're going through these different dynasties, again, you want to substantiate these different claims. When you go into these kings and you see what time period they lived in, who reigned before them and who reigned after them. Because even when you read Jeremiah the 44th chapter, it's not the same Pharaoh as Jeremiah the 46th chapter. It's not the same Pharaoh that you read about in Genesis, with Joseph. And that's not the same Pharaoh that you read about in Exodus with Moses. So you want to make sure you're going. I believe we touched on that when we went over Egypt too. You want to make sure which Pharaoh you're going over for different time periods. It's not the same Pharaoh that's just living for all eternity. He dealt with Joseph, dealt with Moses, dealt with them, the Babylonians, just the same Pharaoh, never died. So you want to make sure you kind of touch on that point too. Nevertheless, you got Pharaoh Necho, was king of the 26th dynasty, which ruled from Sayes. Necho undertook a number of construction projects across his kingdom. In his reign, according to Greek historian Herodotus, Necho II sent out an expansion of Phoenicians, which in 3 years sailed from the Red Sea and Africa to a strait, Gibraltar, Gibraltar, and back to Egypt. His son Muscamatus II, upon his succession, may have removed Necho's name from monuments. It says in the second paragraph, Necho played a significant role in the historians of the Neo-Assyrian Empire, the Neo-Babylonian Empire, and Kingdom of Judah. Right, so he played in the big role of the Kingdom of Judah. It says Necho II is most likely the Pharaoh Necho who was mentioned in 2 Kings, 2 Chronicles, and Jeremiah of the Bible. That's plain. So that's a little background on Pharaoh Necho. You want to know your enemies. All right, this man killed one of the top 3 righteous kings. So you kind of want to know who he is, the background, and substantiate these different claims. So we can go back to the last article. I'm gonna finish out on that and get probably one more precept on there. Right. I'm gonna go to the where it says battle. It says, right, when the Assyrian capital Nineveh, I just read that. Salakia.
You right here.
Battle. Yeah, Khan. It says the Egyptians met in full might at the Babylonian and Median army led by Nebuchadnezzar II at Carchemish, where the combined Egyptian and Assyrian forces were destroyed. It says Assyria ceased to exist. Damn. Right? Assyria ceased to exist as an independent power, and Egypt retreated. It was no longer a significant force in the ancient Near East. Babylonia reached its economic peak after 605 BC. And when you read about this history, you're going to read a lot about Egypt on a lot of sides. Believe it or not, Israel, a lot of from the tribe of Judah, we fled into Egypt. All right, we seen Nebuchadnezzar coming. We seen all type of power and all hell he was coming with, and we fled into Egypt. And through that, the Babylonians, they also destroyed Egypt as well for linking up with Assyria and trying to stop them from their reign. I want to go to Jeremiah, the 44th chapter real quick.
Come, I got a precept after you.
Let's go to Jeremiah 44 to show that. how Egypt, how Israel tried to flee into Egypt. Let me get there real quick. It's Jeremiah chapter 44, right? And verse, I'm gonna start at verse number. Let me see, one. I'm gonna start at Jeremiah 42.
Yeah.
You said what?
Jeremiah 42. You said Jeremiah 42.
Kanye, let me start at verse 42. Want to make sure I get. If I'm taking too long, you can get your precept. I'm gonna try to find this real quick, but you can grab your precept.
Come, I'm gonna go to the book of Ezekiel real quick, chapter 17. So I mean, there was many prophecies, like I said, regarding. I'll keep doing that. Right, many prophecies regarding Israel. That's they're gonna cleave unto Egypt. Israel cleaved unto Egypt a lot. They always cleaved unto man. They try to cleave unto Pharaoh Necho, but even he was put to the worst. Even he was put to the worst, man. Right, Ezekiel chapter 17 and verse 13, and have taken the king's seed and made a covenant with him, have taken an oath to him. He also have taken the mighty of the land. Right, but that the kingdom might be based in Shlakia, that it might not lift up itself, but by the keeping of the covenant, it might stand. Right, made a covenant with the Egyptians. Right, took of the king's seed, meaning his child, and kind of set him up, as a puppet king. Right, and it says, but he rebelled against him in sending his ambassadors into Egypt, that they may give him horses and much people. Shall he prosper? That's why the Lord says, shall he prosper? Right, it's like they made a king covenant with the king of Babylon, set him up as a puppet king, but that puppet king thought to rebel against Nebuchadnezzar, or Nebuchadnezzar at the time, Nebuchadnezzar at the time. So the Lord says, shall he prosper? Shall he escape that doeth such things? Or shall he break the covenant and be delivered? As I live, saith the Lord God, surely in a place where the king dwelleth that made him king, whose oath he despised and whose covenant he brake, even with him in the midst of Babylon shall die. Neither shall Pharaoh with his mighty army and great company make for him in the war by casting a mount and building a force to cut off many persons. Seeing he despised the oath by breaking the covenant, when lo, he had given his hand and have done all these things, he shall not escape. So yeah, Israel kept trying to cleave unto Pharaoh, man. Just loving Pharaoh so much, man. Israel always wanted to go to Egypt. What they say in the world, king, they be glazing. This glazing Pharaoh, man. The Lord said he's not going to save you. What are you trying to do? The king of Babylon going to take him down too. Right. What you got there?
Let's go to Jeremiah 42 and verse number 9. Right, Jeremiah had to beg Israel to not go to Egypt. He said, if you go to Egypt, Most High gonna kill you. Egypt not gonna save you. That's the Most High have to put it plain. All right, it's either you go to Egypt, you're gonna get destroyed with the Egyptians. But if you stay in Israel and fight, I will deliver you. The Most High always made a way out. See, the Most High is so practical, he always made a way out for his people. But Israel is so stiff-necked, they'll do anything to just rebel. Stiff-necked people. Nevertheless, it's Jeremiah 42 and verse 9. It says, then, right, it says, and said unto them, thus saith the Lord, the God of Israel, unto whom ye sent me, to present your supplication before him. If ye will still abide in this land, meaning if you stay in Jerusalem, if you stay in Israel, if you abide in this land, then I will build you and not pull you down, and I will plant you and not pluck you up. For I repent me of the evil that I have done unto you, and be not afraid of the king of Babylon. So the Most High has to exhort Israel to not be afraid of the king of Babylon. Why? Because Nebuchadnezzar was putting so much pressure. He was putting so much fear in all these nations. Where Jerusalem, they started seeing, they was getting afraid and lacking faith in all these different things. So the Most High said, be not afraid of the king of Babylon. Don't go to Egypt, of whom you are afraid. Be not afraid of him, saith the Lord, for I am with you to save you and to deliver you from his hand. The Most High said he will deliver us from his hand. You know how comforting that is? And that shows how the people, how our ancestors at this time had zero faith in the Most High. Here it is, the Most High saying, if you'll stay, I'll deliver you. Here it is, we said, nah, hey, he kind of doing, hey, Nebuchadnezzar kind of doing his thing. I think I'm going to flee. I'm going to do my own thing. Y'all stay here, I'm going to flee. Everybody end up fleeing. And for that reason, it says, verse 12, and I will shew mercies unto you, that he may have mercy upon you, and cause you to return to your own land. That's the point, verse 13. But if you say, we will not dwell in this land, neither obey the voice of the Lord your God, saying no, but we will go into the land of Egypt, right? But if Israel flees to Egypt, the same kingdom that's helping Assyria, the same kingdom that's about to be prophesied against about their downfall, it says, where we shall see no war, because they thought, let's go to Egypt. There's not going to be any war, nor destruction. It says, nor hear the sound of the trumpet, nor have hunger of bread, and there we will dwell. It says, and now therefore hear the word of the Lord, ye remnant of Judah. Thus saith Yahweh of hosts, the God of Israel, if ye wholly set your faces to enter into Egypt, and go and sojourn there, then it shall come to pass that the sword which ye fear shall overtake you there, and the land of Egypt, and the famine thereof ye were afraid shall follow close after you there in Egypt, and there ye shall die. Most I said, if you go to Egypt, I'm gonna follow you to Egypt and kill you in Egypt. Imagine that, you just got a death angel just following you, ready to cut you in two. I believe you read that in Second Maccabees. I'm gonna say that's the 15th chapter, if I'm not mistaken, right? Where you had the angel of the Lord following behind that man, ready to cut him in two. So you had these plagues just following right behind the tribe of Judah for everyone that went into Egypt. Mind you, the Most High just said, if you stay in Israel, nothing would happen. Israel, they didn't want to stay. They wanted to flee into Egypt. Now you got the Babylonians about to take over Egypt. I want to get this last quick precept and I'm going to pass it. So what Isaiah 19 and verse number 1. Now, Isaiah the 19th chapter, we kind of link it up with America a lot, which this chapter is a double fold, it's a dual prophecy. Right, in context, it's going into the Babylonians destroying Egypt. Spiritually, it's going into the Most High destroying America, because America is modern day Egypt. So this is the book of Isaiah, chapter 19 and verse 1. It says, the burden of Egypt, behold, the Lord rideth upon thee, so upon a swift cloud, and shall come into Egypt, and the idols of Egypt shall be moved at the presence, and the heart of Egypt shall melt in the presence of it. And I will set the Egyptians against the Egyptians, and they shall fight every one against his brother, and every one against his neighbor, city against city, and kingdom against kingdom. And the spirit of Egypt shall fall in the midst thereof, and I will destroy the counsel thereof, and they shall seek to the idols, and to the charmers, and to them that familiar spirits, and to the wizards. And that's the prophecy against Egypt that's spoken of, coming from the hand of Nebuchadnezzar. I want to get one more precept, Slaki, Jeremiah 4:7. Right, and that's why Nebuchadnezzar was given this title. Right, it's Jeremiah chapter 4 and verse number 7. It says, the lion is come up from his thicket, and the destroyer of the Gentiles is on his way. Right, a lot of people, again, they like to equate that with Yahushua, where spiritually it is talking about Yahushua, but in context, that destroyer of the Gentiles that's on his way, that's Jeremiah prophesying a coming of Nebuchadnezzar. Or yeah, he was given the name the destroyer of the Gentiles, because all these Gentile nations he was destroying, overtaking. Again, you got that battle of Carchemish. He was taking down Assyria, took down Jerusalem. You read Judith the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd chapter. He took down all these different nations and cities and kingdoms, where the Most High gave him the name the destroyer of the Gentiles. And Jeremiah's letting them know, hey, if y'all don't get right, this destroyer is on his way to y'all homeland, which we're going to touch on, Lord willing. It says, he has gone forth from his place to make the land desolate, and thy city shall be laid waste without inhabitant. All right, you got it.
Come So yeah, as you can see, like I said, all these scriptures linking up with Nebuchadnezzar. I mean, in context, is dealing with the Babylonians and Nebuchadnezzar. Like I said, we use this to kind of, show a lot of prophecies, but in context, these scriptures are actually talking about, Nebuchadnezzar and the Babylonian Empire. They play a significant role in our history since they kind of took down our temple and burned it with fire. And the Edomites, even though it's crazy, even though the Edomites was getting persecuted by Nebuchadnezzar, they still found some way to come against us. Evil, right? Raise it. Right, let me go to the book. Actually, let me go to that in Psalms. I mean, what time period was they saying that in? Psalms chapter 37, verse 6. And if you're an Israelite, you be teaching on the highways and byways, you've brought this scripture out. You brought this scripture out before, right? Raise it, right? Even to the foundation thereof. This Psalms chapter 137, I'll start at verse 1. By the rivers of Babylon, there we sat down, yea, we wept when we remembered Zion. And how did King David know about this? Because King David, he's a prophet through the Spirit. Read that in the book of Acts, the 2nd chapter. All right. And it says, we hanged our harps upon the willows in the midst thereof. Willows are low-hanging trees, right? We hanged our harps, meaning there's no more mirth. There's no more songs that was played in Jerusalem and Israel. He's lamenting right now for his people. For there they that carried us away captive required of us a song. And that's why we link up these things with America, because they do the same thing today. They want us to sing and dance for them. And they that wasted us required us of mirth, saying, sing us one of the songs of Zion. How shall we sing the Lord's song in a strange land? In context, talking about the Babylon across the Euphrates, across the Tigris River. We were in lands we never knew. Way far from the Levant. Right? Now we in America. And it says, if I forgot thee, O Jerusalem, let my right hand forget her cunning. If I do not remember thee, let my tongue cleave to the roof of my mouth. If I prefer not Jerusalem above my chief joy. But what? But remember, O Lord, the children of Edom in the day of Jerusalem, who said, raise it, even to the foundation thereof. O daughter of Babylon, right, who art to be destroyed, happy shall he be that rewardeth thee as thou hast served us, right? The Neo-Babylonian empire, they were going to be destroyed, but also talking about America, who's art to be destroyed. Happy shall he be that rewardeth thee as thou hast served us. Happy shall he be that taketh and dasheth thy little ones against the stones. But my point was, even Edom, even in our calamity, when we're by the rivers of Babylon, how is Edom still finding a way, right? In context, still finding a way to persecute us, even though they was getting persecuted by the same king of Babylon, right? So we got to remember these nations, man. And now when we read this, we understand in context what it's talking about. All those are still talking about America as well. But we can go back to the Battle of Carchemish. All right. The Battle of Carchemish. Let me go back to this article right here. So we wanted to stop and kind of touch into the Battle of Carchemish. The Battle of Carchemish played a significant role in the scriptures, man. All right. 2 Kings chapter 23, going into 2 Kings 24 with the revolt of Israel, right, in 597 BC. All right. So we had to kind of touch on these battles, right? First Ezra, the first chapter, as we went into with Josiah. Right. So now let me keep reading on this. In 605, Nebuchadnezzar crushed the Egyptian forces near Carchemish in a cruel, bloody battle and pursued them into the south. On receiving news of his father's death shortly afterward, he returned immediately to Babylon to secure his throne. The Babylonian Chronicle, a Kunai tablet that records a number of important events in Neo-Babylonian history, covers the years 605 to 594. Right. And we're going to jump down right here real quick. I kind of read this. Right. And it says it records a number of campaigns into the Levant where Nebuchadnezzar took Ashkelon 604. Right. That's the chief city of the Philistines. Like I said, this is a very big thing going on. He's causing hell. These nations are losing their mind. Right. And it says fought against both the Egyptians and the Arabs between 601 and 598, which we read, Battle of Carchemish, and put down a revolt in Jerusalem in 597. What was that revolt in Jerusalem? I just read that in Ezekiel, the 17th chapter. That revolt is where we made a covenant with the king of Babylon. He put Zedekiah up on the throne, and Zedekiah thought to do his own will and revolted against the king of Babylon and linked up with the Egyptians. But the Lord said they still gonna get put down too. That's the revolt that this is talking about, 597. And it says, and then 11 years later in Zedekiah's reign, 586, we know what happened. Babylon was taken down. And it says, and after which he returned to Babylonia to fight against the enemies by the Tigris River in 596, having put down a revolt in Babylonia with much bloodshed. Nebuchadnezzar campaigned further into the west. He continued these military campaigns throughout his reign, even attempting to an invasion in Egypt, the culmination of his expansion policy. In 568 and 567, Nebuchadnezzar eventually agreed to a border with Egypt, allowing the two empires to coexist, because you can't go past the bounds that the Most High set up for you. You can't just, the reason why he made this, because you can't, he tried to go further into Egypt. Even, hey, if it was up to him, if it was up to his mind, he would even try to go south to Egypt all the way into the Nubian Empire, man, with the Ethiopians, the Somalians. But the Lord appointed his bounds that which he cannot pass. Let's go to the book of Job. You can't just do what you, I mean, the Lord already set up bounds for you. And within that time period, you rule. And then after that, your time is up. This Job chapter 14, I'm going to start at verse 5. Seeing his days are determined, right? That the Nebuchadnezzar days are already determined. His length of rulership was already determined of what he's going to do and what he can't do. The number of his months are with thee. Thou has appointed his bounds that he cannot pass. The same way the Most High appoints the bounds of the river that can't pass the sand, the bounds of the certain oceans where it can't go flow into different, areas of the world. Then guess what? The Most High does the same thing with man, with rulerships, with kingdoms. The Most High has his months that that the Babylonian Empire was going to be in the top empire of the world. So was the Assyrians. And we're going to get the end of the Babylonian Empire as well. The Most High did the same thing with America. America doesn't, and we always say through the Spirit, doesn't have 200 more years left. America is at the end of its empire. Right now, they're scraping up the last few years they got left on the scene until it finally checks out. The Most High appointed his bounds that America can't pass, Babylon can't pass, Egypt can't pass, the Achaemenid Empire couldn't pass, the Greeks, the Romans, and guess what? America can't pass these bounds as well. But touching on the Babylonian Empire, he tried to go all the way into Egypt. We just read that. He tried to go all the way into Egypt. It didn't work out, so the Most High made them coexist together. The Most High put on the spirit on these kings to coexist together. Let me get a precept. Go to Daniel 4:17. These kingdoms don't belong to you. Nothing belongs to you, man. Man thinks because they're ruling, you was put in that position by God. This is Daniel chapter 4 and verse 17. This matters by the decree of the watchers. Why? Who are the watchers? The angels. And the demand of the word of the holy ones, the angels, to the intent that the living may know. Who's the living? We're the living. This is the intent that we may know what? That the Most High ruleth in the kingdom of men and giveth it to whomsoever he will and setteth up over the bases of men. So this is the Lord's show. This is the Lord's doing. You're not doing anything. You can't just take over Egypt. No, the Lord made them coexist. The Lord made them coexist. Let me give one more precept. And then we go back into it if you don't got nothing. Right? It's Proverbs 21 and verse 1. The king's heart is in the hands of the Lord as the rivers of water. He turneth it to whomsoever he will. Yeah, so he could have kept fighting. He could have kept trying, but he knew he wasn't going to get anywhere. So he said, you know what? Let's just make a treaty in 568, and that's what they did. Now, going up some years before this, 20 years before this, what happened? Let's read about it. That's when you get into this. Nebuchadnezzar's 3 sieges of Jerusalem. Right? 3 sieges of Jerusalem. One siege in 605 during Jehoiakim. All right. You got 598, well, Jehoiachin, or 597, where we kind of get into the revolt a little bit. Ezekiel prophesied about this, right? Which we kind of went into. And then the last siege, 11 years later, Zedekiah, right, was taken down. And the rest of our, empire, Judah and Jerusalem, was taken into captivity. You want to say something on this, or I can kind of pull up some scriptures about this.
I was gonna say, yeah, the siege in 605 BC. Some scholars count it as a siege. I know Babylon arrived also at 605 BC when Jehoiakim was king. But the two main sieges that
Yep.
caused a big effect was around, like the brother said, around 598, 597 BC, and around 587, some say 586 BC. So we can get some precepts on, that as well. I want to get a quick precept on that if we grab some. Let's go to Second Kings, because you read about both sieges in the Bible. Let's go to Second Kings chapter 23. All right, Second Kings chapter 23 and verse, or 24 rather. Second Kings 24 and verse number 1. Right, you read about the first siege in 597 and Second Kings the 24th chapter. Then you read about the second siege and Second Kings the 25th chapter was Zedekiah. So this Second Kings chapter 24 and verse number 1. In the days of Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, right, came up, and Jehoiakim became his servant 3 years. Then he turned and rebelled against them. So after Nebuchadnezzar kind of overtook Jehoiakim, he ended up rebelling after 3 years against Nebuchadnezzar. It says, verse 2, and the Lord sent against him bands of the Chaldees and bands of the Syrians and bands of the Moabites and bands of Ammon, and set them against Judah to destroy it, according to the word of the Lord, which was spoken by his servants, the prophets. Right, because we just read Jeremiah spoke of it, and Ezekiel spoke of it, and Isaiah also spoke of it and prophesied of it. And you read about it in Judith. Reading on, it says, verse 3, surely the commandment of the Lord came upon Judah to remove them out of his sight for the sins of Manasseh, according to all that he did. I believe Manasseh, if I'm not mistaken, was the son of Josiah, or father of Josiah. Hezekiah, Manasseh, Josiah. And Manasseh, he was one of the most wicked kings of Judah.
Hezekiah, Manasseh, Amon. We can't be forgetting about Amon. Everybody forget about Amon. He reigned 2 years.
Oh yeah, Kanye, you're right.
And then Josiah.
Kanye. Nevertheless, Manasseh, he was wicked. He was the worst king before he repented. He was the worst king to rule in Judah. He was falling after the ways of northern kingdom. And they was going to hell off. Nevertheless, the Most High, he remembered the sins of Manasseh. Right? He remembered the sins of Manasseh, and Israel is getting recorded, is getting judged according to all that he did, and that our fathers did. Verse 4, it says, and also for the innocent blood that he shed, for he filled Jerusalem with innocent blood, which the Lord would not pardon. And though the Lord forgive them, Most High never forgot. He still had to get judged, or his seed had to get judged for what he did. Reading on, it says, now the rest of the acts of Jehoiakim and all that he did, are they not written in the book of the Chronicles of the kings of Judah? So Jehoiakim slept with his fathers, and Jehoiachin, his son, reigned in his stead. And the king of Egypt came not again anymore out of his land, for the king of Babylon had taken from the river Egypt unto the river Euphrates all that pertained to the king of Egypt. And Jehoiachin was 18 years old when he began to reign, and he reigned in Jerusalem 3 months. And his mother's name was Nahashta, the daughter of Elnathan. And we can really read this whole chapter. It kind of goes into the whole siege and what happened. I might jump down. This whole chapter got good history. I'm going to jump down to verse 12. It says, in Jehoiachin. Oh, hold on. I'm sorry, verse 11. All right. Verse 11, it says, and Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came against the city, and his servants did besiege it. Right? That's that siege that we just read. Well, the first siege, 605, that's verse 1. Right? Where Jehoiakim was kind of already under him, rebelled. Then you got 597, verse 10. One down, it says, I believe I was at verse 11. right? And Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came against the city and his servants and did besiege it. And Jehoiachin, the king of Judah, went out to the king of Babylon, he and his mother and his servants, and princes and officers. And the king of Babylon took him in the 8th year of his reign. Right? But you got it. I don't want to read too much on here. But you know, this whole chapter do go into that. So it's a fire chapter.
Yeah, going to the revolt of Babylon, right? And then when you get down to Zedekiah, he's made king. Is Zedekiah? This is around same time, right? This is at 2 Kings chapter 24 and verse 17. And the king of Babylon made Mattaniah his father's brother king in his stead, and changed his name to Zedekiah. Right? He's the brother of Jehoiakim. Right? It's Jehoiachin's uncle, Zedekiah. Zedekiah was 21 years old when he began to reign, and reigned 11 years in Jerusalem. And his mother name was Hamutal, the daughter of Jeremiah of Libnah. Right? Oh, this is why they said 605 BC king, because this happened around that time when we was going to. I remember this is around this time, 605. Right? So 2 Kings 24 is around that time. Then now Zedekiah, when he came into power, is around 597. And then he's the one that's going to rebel against the king. Zedekiah is the one that's going to rebel. To kind of link it up real quick, is going to rebel around this time.
So I believe in verse 1, that's going into 605 and then going down.
Mm-hmm.
That's going into 597, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah. Leading up to 597. So this is around 605 all the way leading up to 597. This is the revolt of when he came again the first time. The second time, the major times, when Zedekiah was made king, because he wanted to do what he wanted to do. And he's going to tell you, right? That's why Ezekiel 17 says that. And it says that he did that which was evil in the sight of the Lord, according to all that Jehoiakim had done. For through the anger of the Lord it came to pass in Jerusalem and Judah, until he had cast them out from his presence, that Zedekiah rebelled against the king of Babylon. That's why we read in Ezekiel chapter 17, and go back to that. Now these prophecies make sense. That's why we got to go into the prophecies. And you have to link up the history, Israel. That's why we got to do this. We're not going to understand it. Right? It's Ezekiel chapter 17 and verse 13. This is talking about Zedekiah. And have taken of the king's seed and made a covenant with him. Who's the king's seed? Josiah's son, right? And made a covenant with him, and had taken an oath of him. He have also taken the mighty the land, that the kingdom might be base, that it might not lift up itself, but by the keeping of the covenant it might stand. The only way after 605 BC that he allowed Israel to stand is through a covenant that he made, where he set up He set up Zedekiah as a client king, or as a puppet king, right? Just like these American presidents. You think they can do what they want to do? They're puppets. They're only there because somebody wants them to be there. So Zedekiah was only set up as a king because the king of Babylon wanted him there through a covenant. That's why it says, and the king of Babylon made Mattaniah his father's brother king in his stead, and changed his name to Zedekiah. He even changed his name. He said, you're not going to be Mattaniah, you're Zedekiah. That's what I want to call you. Right? So, but he rebelled against him and sending his ambassadors into Egypt. That's the rebellion that's going to start the revolt of Babylon, because Zedekiah wanted to do what he wanted to do. That they might give him horses and much people. Shall he prosper? Shall he escape the things that he such doeth things? So like, shall he escape that doeth such things, or shall he break the covenant and be delivered? That's why the Lord said, even in the midst of Babylon, he shall die. We're going to read about Zedekiah dying and his two sons dying in the midst of Babylon, because they wanted to do what they wanted to do. So let's go to 2 Kings chapter 25 and 1.
And this one going into 586.
Yeah, this is going into 586. This is 11 years later. Right? So it went from the revolt of Babylon, 597, where Nebuchadnezzar had to come and put that out. Now this is around 586. And it came to pass in the 9th year of his reign, in the 10th month, in the 10th day of the month, that Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came, he and all his host, against Jerusalem. Because remember, in 605, he was still king of the Assyrians. Right? And we were on the time of Jehoiakim. But now he's king of Babylon. He kind of established himself. And it says, and pitched against it, and they built forts against it round about. And the city was besieged unto the 11th year of King Zedekiah. That matches up. Why? Because when 598 to 586, really 597, that's 11 years. So it went from the revolt of Babylon with Zedekiah acting up, and the Lord judged them 11 years later. The Lord don't have to get you tomorrow. The Lord, 11 years later, his sons was old. And we're going to read about what happened to his sons. Right? And it says, and all his hosts against Jerusalem pitched against it, and they built forts against round about. And the city was besieged until the 11th year of King Zedekiah. And on the 9th day of the 4th month, the famine prevailed in the city, and there was no bread for the people in the land. Because if you know anything about war, if you know anything about how Mount Zion was set up, it's on a mountain. It gives you a strategic location so you can see your enemies coming against you. But the drawback for Mount Zion being on a mount, or if you're talking about Samaria over there, Northern Kingdom being on a mountain, our enemies would surround us and we couldn't leave for food. We couldn't leave. So now a famine is going to happen because you can't leave that mountain, or you can't go to neighboring or sister cities to gather food because they surrounded you. So that's what they did. That's what the Romans did. They surrounded us. They surrounded Jerusalem, 70 AD. You can read about it. And it says, and the city was broken up, and all the men of war fled by night by the way of the gate of the two walls, which is by the king's garden. Now the Chaldeans were against the city round about. That's what I just said. You study warfare. That's what they used to do to our people. They used to always surround the city of Jerusalem and starve us out. And the king went to the way toward the plain, and the army of the Chaldeans pursued after the king. This is talking about Zedekiah, and overtook him in the plains of Jericho, and all his army were scattered from him. So they took to the king and brought him up to the king of Babylon to Riblah, and they gave judgment upon him. Let's see the judgment they gave to Zedekiah. And they slew the sons of Zedekiah before his eyes, and put out the eyes of Zedekiah, and bound him with the fetters of brass, and carried him into Babylon. And he died in Babylon. So they basically killed his sons and took out his eyes. So the last thing he ever saw was that his sons was, killed before his eyes, which was a heavy judgment. Imagine your sons being the last thing you see ever before you die. It's torture. Yep. It's mental. That's mental warfare.
Yeah, I was gonna say that kind of play on your mind too. Like you said, it's the last thing you ever see is your sons be a slave.
Mm-hmm.
You hear the cries and tears, and you see the neck halfway off as they cutting his neck off and stabbing him up. And that's the last image you see of your sons.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's exactly. That's why the Lord said, we go back to Ezekiel 17, in the midst of Babylon, he shall die. Right? He shall die. And that's what Ezekiel 17 is kind of going into, is about, 2 Kings 23, 24. Also Ezekiel chapter 19 and verse 12. When you read Ezekiel chapter 19 on down, right, that great eagle. So this is prophecies going into Nebuchadnezzar, so let's read down. And now we're reading about 586. It's 2 Kings 25, and I'm going to start at verse. Verse 9. And he burnt the house of the Lord in the king's house, and all the house of Jerusalem, and every great man's house he burnt with fire. And all the army of the Chaldeans that were with the captain of the guard broke down the walls of Jerusalem round about. Now the rest of the people that were left in the city, and the fugitives that fell away to the king of Babylon with the remnant of the multitude, did now reside on the captain of the guard take away. But the captain of the guard left the poor of the land to be vine dressers and husbandmen. So this is what happened. This is the siege of Babylon. You got anything on this, King?
I got a precept. Now, brother, I already kind of hit it. We brought out Psalms 137. You can read verse. I'm gonna read verse. I believe that was verse 9 where it said it burnt the cities.
Mm-hmm.
Right, verse 9, it says, and he burnt the house of the Lord and the king's house and all the houses of Jerusalem, and every great man's house burnt he with fire. Now the brother kind of touched on it already. The ones that burnt the houses and that burnt down the house of the Lord was actually the Edomites. Our Esau, he went out his way, got himself involved in a war that he had nothing to do with, and the only thing he wanted to do was burn down the house of the Lord. I'm gonna read that. I'm gonna kind of read it again. Psalms 137 and verse number 9. All right, Psalms 137 and verse number 9. For verse 7. It says, remember, O Lord, the children of Edom and the day of Jerusalem, who said, raise it, even to the foundation thereof. Now, let's go to First Esdras, chapter 4. Right, let's go to First Esdras. What's that, 4 and 45. Right, let's get that real quick. And that shows that the children of Edom, they're the ones that actually burnt down the temple, the house of the Most High, and these other great houses. Again, nowhere did you read in 2 Kings 24, 2 Kings 25. You didn't even read about Edom during the Battle of Carchemish. Nowhere do you see Edom in here. But when it comes to the downfall of the so-called black and Hispanic man, you know Esau's right there just waiting and praying and fasting for your downfall. So this First Esdras chapter 4 and verse 45. It says, thou also hast vowed to build up the temple. Right, because during this time, the rebuilding stage, you had Nehemiah, Zerubbabel, these different men that went back, they built up the temple at these different time periods. So the Most High is reminding Israel and Ezra, of course, he's reminding them, y'all vowed to build up the temple. You read that in the book of Haggai. The Lord used Haggai to get on Zerubbabel and get on Joshua, put on the spirit to stir up to build up the temple. So he's reminding them that y'all already vowed to do this. It says to build up the temple which the Edomites burned when Judea was made desolate by the Chaldees. The Chaldees are the Babylonians. So as Judah and Judea was being made desolate by the Babylonians, Edom went out their way to burn down the temple. And we went over that last week. And the Assyrian Empire, I believe. All right, when you go into that history, Esau, they helped the Syrians burn down the cities. They had nothing to do with the war. They just came in last minute, helped burn down the city. Yeah, just peeking in, just waiting and lusting to burn down God's chosen people. And when you read that account about Assyria, you don't even read about Edom in the Bible, but history has it documented that Esau was in the midst of that thing. So just to let me back off that point, 586, 587 BC, Edom was the one that kind of finished off the job by burning down a temple, the most holiest thing within our homeland. They didn't worry about going to war with us, fighting toe to toe, picking their own battle. They just said, no, you destroy them. We just want to burn it down. We just want to get that lust of sin, Israel and the house of God burned. That's how much hatred you got to have for a group of people. To just watch them slowly decrease, get overthrown, and then you finish it off by burning everything. That's off. But yet you still got them coons that want to say the so-called white man, and I say Esau can be saved. Right? But he burned down your temples. But you got it. I just wanted to hammer down that point.
Yeah, stop trying to save Esau, because Esau's willing to kill himself to hurt you.
Right.
I mean, that's how I know Esau is Esau. They're the only people that will go into it's a building. It's a random. They not from that area. It's a burning building, and they'll go inside to see why the building is burning.
Right.
They getting persecuted. Like I mentioned, they're getting persecuted by the same nation. They're not exempt, because Jeremiah chapter 49. Let's go to Jeremiah 49. That prophecy, Jeremiah 47. Really started from verse 45, 46, 47, 48, 49, 50, 51 is all going into how the king of Babylon is about to cause hell on each nation. You can read about Moab. You can read about the Philistines. You can read about Israel's judgment, Ammon's judgment. You even read about Esau's judgment from the Chaldeans. And somehow, some way, while they're dying with the rest of the damn known world, they still find a way to damn persecute you, Jake. And you want to save these people. Let's get it.
Madness. Said madness.
Madness. This is Jeremiah 49 and verse 10. Verse 7. So the Lord just got done throwing prophecies for Ammon. They can't escape the judgment of the king of Babylon. Verse 7. Concerning Edom, thus saith the Lord, is wisdom no more in Teman? As counsel perish from the prudent, is their wisdom vanished? Flee ye, turn back. Dwell deep, O inhabitants of Dedan, for I will bring the calamity of Esau upon him, the time that I will visit him. If grape gatherers come to thee, would they not leave some gleaning grapes? If these by night they will destroy till they have enough, right? I mean, you have a little bit of mercy. Even a thief, they're going to take what they need and they're going to be gone. But Esau, what? But I have made Esau bare. I've uncovered his secret places, and he shall not be able to hide himself. His seed is polluted in his brethren and his neighbors, and he is not. Leave thy fatherless children, I will preserve them alive, and let thy widows trust in me. For thus saith the Lord, behold, they whose judgment was not to drink of the cup, now have assuredly drunk it. And art thou he that shalt go together unpunished? Thou shalt not go unpunished, but thou shalt surely drink of it. And it goes on to see, hey, Esau, you're gonna catch hell from this man too. But somehow, some way, they wanna come and destroy your temple as well. Stop trying to save these people. Esau, I don't care what empire we're going into, we always going to come back to you because you wicked. You wicked. You damn devil. And we're going to take your babies and smash them against the rocks.
Right.
But just in case you may say, well, how do we know that Bible is true? How do we know that these things actually happen? All right, how do we know in 2 Kings chapter 25 is real and these prophecies you black Hebrew Israelites say, how do we know that Bible is real? How do we know that actually happened in 586? Well, we got something for you, you scoffers out there. Let's go into the evidence of the 587, 586 BCE Babylonian conquest of Jerusalem found in Mount Zion excavation, meaning you had people at UNC Charlotte archaeological excavation on Mount Zion in Jerusalem making significant discoveries from the 2019 season. So you can't deny this. It happened. It happened. All right. So let's read about this. Let's get some evidence showing you how they leveled you to the ground. Jake, they leveled me to the ground. Us. We all in this. Right. And it says researchers digging at UNC Charlotte's ongoing archaeological excavation on Mount Zion in Jerusalem have announced a second significant discovery, not first, but second from the 2019 season. Clear evidence. Man, I love the verbiage of the Babylonian conquest of the city from 587 to 586 BCE. The discovery is of a deposit including layers of ash because they burnt it to the ground. Arrowheads dating from the period as well as the Iron Age potsherds, lamps, and a significant piece of period jewelry, a gold and silver tassel of earring. There are also signs of significant Iron Age structures in the associated area, but the building beneath layers from later periods has yet to be excavated. So basically what's going to say that this scholar, right, the Mount Zion Archaeological Project, co-directed by UNC Charlotte professor of history, Shyman Gibson, Rafi Lewis, a senior lecturer at Ashkelon Academic College, and a fellow of Haifa University, and James Tibbert, UNC Charlotte professor of religious studies. So all these men has been in operation for more than a decade, has made numerous significant finds relating to the ancient cities, many historical periods, right? But it also includes that these findings that these men has found, they made an announcement on July 29th on the evidence concerning the sack of the city during the First Crusade. The current find is one of the oldest and perhaps the most prominent in its historical significance, as the Babylonian conquest in Jerusalem is a major monument in Israelite history. Right? And why? Because we're going verse after verse, prophecy after prophecy, history after history, linking it up through the Spirit, showing you that this is a significant thing that happened in Israelite history. The team believes that the newly found deposit can be dated to the specific event of the conquest because of the unique mix of artifacts and materials found, pottery and lamps, side by side with evidence of the Babylonian siege represented by burnt wood and ashes, and a number of Scythian type bronze and iron arrowheads and that are typical of that period. Why Scythian type? Because I believe, let me see if I can find the article, but I believe because they linked up with the Medes and they linked up with the Scythians early on to take over when you go into the the battle of Assyria, the revolt of Babylon. They linked up with the Scythians. I think I brought that out a little bit earlier, King.
Yeah.
If I can find that. Let me
Yeah, I
see.
believe it was, the battle of
I think it was this article I brought out. Let me see.
it was in two articles. They linked it with the Scythians.
Here we go.
Yeah,
All right. And it says historical overview in the see that you can't deny history. You can't deny it. We're getting multiple sources saying the same thing. In the years that followed the attacks, he attacks the cities in Assyria with median and later Scythian support. So how did he get Scythian support? Obviously, they must have gave him weapons because they were using some of the same artillery, right? They was using some of the same artillery and ironheads that are typical of that time period. So these are excavations. These are physical facts showing you that these are the Babylonians that took us down. Linking it up with the other nations around that time in the weapons that they use. And it says, because of the site's location, various alternative explanations for the artifacts can be eliminated, the researchers argue, right? So this is proof. And if you want to link to this article, here's the link at the top. You can read it more on your own time. But it kind of goes into what we've been saying about the siege of Jerusalem in the 11th year of King Zedekiah, right? It was multiple sieges that happened, right? But you already know the reason why King Zedekiah kind of did that revolt, because he didn't want to pay taxes to Nebuchadnezzar, and that was a direct result of this was the destruction of the city and the temple, and that was by the hand. The Most High even prophesied about that by the hand of the Most High, right? So this is evidence showing that these things happen, and you can't escape the evidence. You can't escape the history. Now, did you want to say anything about this, King, before I move on to the other one?
You kind of, made a plan.
Calm. So that's what it is. Now, these are the kings of Babylon. Just to kind of give you, who is ruling during these different times, right? You can kind of go over this, King.
Yeah. So these are the kings. We touched on Neo-Babylonian, all right, and we touched on Nebuchadnezzar II. These are the two main Babylonian kings that had a big part in our history, right? Nabopolassar being the one that made the shift change, right? And Nebuchadnezzar the one that namely oppressed us for that time period, right? And you got a male, right? Marta, you got Nergesselar, you got Labashi, Marta, right? You got Nambodius, and you got Belshazzar. Now, Belshazzar is another king that you read about in the Bible as well. Let's go to Daniel. Let me get that precept in Daniel with Belshazzar. Let's go to Daniel.
Khan. Hey, King, before you even bring that up, before you bring up Daniel, it's good that you're going into Daniel. Now that we know these kings that ruled during this time, right? I want to show the prophets that also were contemporaries around this time. Like I said, it's a good thing going to Daniel, right? You got Daniel during the exile, Ezekiel, Jeremiah going into the exile, right? Wouldn't really say Jonah, he's kind of a couple hundred years before, but Obadiah, right, prophesied about Edom during this time. Isaiah was before, Nahum, Zephaniah, Habakkuk, Amos, prophesied in the northern kingdom, right? So you had men even after Haggai, Zechariah, Malachi, Judith, Tobit. So as the brothers going to Daniel, kind of have an idea of what prophets lived during this time. Baruch, Song of the Three Holy Children, or Daniel and his two Hebrew friends, his brothers, were persecuted. So Khan, you got it.
So let's go to let's read about Belshazzar now. Now all these other kings, they're important, but they don't really have that much history within Israel. So we're gonna stay to the ones that really played a pivotal part. But this Daniel chapter 5 verse 1. It says, Belshazzar, the king, made a great feast to 1,000 of his lords, and drank wine before 1,000. Belshazzar, whilst he tasted the wine, commanded to bring golden and silver vessels, which his father Nebuchadnezzar, right, his quote unquote great grandfather, etc., had taken out of the temple which was in Jerusalem. That's off. That's what Esau do now. All right, they had a great feast, and the things that we had in the temples, they used that for their gold and their cups. I'm led to believe, the things that we had in our temple, Esau, they using our cups now, doing some wicked sacrifices where they're drinking baby blood and doing them oral circumcision, spitting it in our cups with these Amalekites and their wicked deeds that they do. So the same way how the Babylonians, they went in our temples, took our things. Guess what? The so-called white man, the real Neo-Babylonians, Esau, it's that same spirit today, which is why the Most High called them the daughter of Babylon. All right, Babylon are great because they move in the same spirit of ancient Babylon. So you have this man Belshazzar, he made this feast, had our cups from our temple. It says, in taking out the temple which was in Jerusalem, that the king and his princes and wives and his concubines might drink therein. Right, and that's showing how you also have Belshazzar within the precepts as well. Now, I had an article going into, I believe it was the Chronicle of Nebuchadnezzar. It touched on a battle, I believe. Another source proving that 586 did happen. Right, because with these kings, you have certain chronicles. You said what?
The Nebuchadnezzar Chronicle.
Oh yeah, it's right there too. So the same way how you read in the Bible, you got the Chronicles of the Kings of Judah. All right, the Chronicles of this, man, Chronicles of that. You got the book of the prophet Nathan, and then all these different chronicles within the Bible. These nations, they have their own chronicles. They have their own writings with their side of the story as well. Same thing that we went over last week. All these different cuneiforms and these hieroglyphs and these different writings and stories. Every nation has their own side of the story, for lack of better terms, on what took place. So you got the Nebuchadnezzar Chronicle, also known as the Jerusalem Chronicle, as one of the series of Babylonian chronicles, and contains a description of the first 11 years of the reign of Nebuchadnezzar. The tablet details Nebuchadnezzar's military campaign in the west and has been interpreted to refer to the Battle of Carchemish and the Siege of Jerusalem. So this cuneiform and these chronicles, the Babylonians, they actually have scribed out in their writings that both the Battle of Carchemish took place and that the Siege of Jerusalem also took place. So you can read about these events more than just the Bible. Again, that's why it's good to go into these different sources, because God knows who may come up, try to scoff it and say, well, that's not real. And then you could say, well, how come the Babylonians got this same thing scribed out in their history? Syrians got this scribed out, right? Scythians, Egyptians, they got all this written out. But this is just to prove and furthermore solidify that these things and these historical things did take place. It says the tablet is numbered around ABC 5 and Grayson's standard text and BM 21946 in the British Museum. And this thing is all the way in Britain. I believe the Syrian one that we went over last week. All right, that's also in the British museums. So we got to take a trip to the damn British Museum one day.
Brother's going to Europe this year, man. We may stop there.
See that?
You know what I'm saying? Have a little field trip on a field trip.
Right, righteousness. Got all these damn, so what I'm looking for. All our artifacts is in, Britain. Got it hid up from us. We went over the Syrians. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, they got the what's the one in Rome? Start with a V, I believe.
The Vatican.
Yeah, the Vatican. At the Vatican, they said the Vatican still got the Mayans and the Incas gold in there, just on display. All the gold that they took from that empire, from the Inca, Mayan, Aztec empire, they got all that gold in the Vatican, just on display. Just gathered in their face. Nevertheless, I'm gonna jump down to Carchemish, hammer down this last point. It says the tablet claims that Nebuchadnezzar crossed the river to go into Egypt, right, to go against the Egyptian army, which lay in Carchemish. But that's pretty much hammering the point. Let me backing off the source that the brother brought out, showing how they actually went and dug up in the earth, found some artifacts, and the Babylonians, they had these artifacts too. Now that, since they had the Esau, nevertheless, but these things is running out, throughout all nations. But that's all I had on that article. I believe that was the last article I had, if I'm not mistaken.
No, you have to battle Apis too.
Oh yeah, yeah.
And like I said, that's more archaeological evidence. Where was I just at?
Yeah.
Man, we got so many tabs open. Where was I just at? Damn. All right, there we go. So we had tablets. You got excavations. There's unfathomable, that's a word, proof, right? that these things happen to our people. You have it in museums in damn Great Britain of evidence of our people being taken away. How much more proof do you need to know about the history that happened in the Bible for it to be true? Now, as we went into the coming in of the Babylonian Empire, as we went what happened during the Babylonian Empire, what nations they took down, different battles, different sieges, linking it up with the history, linking it up with the different men and the prophets and the contemporaries that lived during that time, linking it up with the prophecies. As we read in Joel 14:5, the Lord appointed his bounds he cannot pass. Is the Babylonian Empire still here? Yeah, they're here still, America, but is the Neo-Babylonian Empire still here? No. Why? Because the Lord, now we're going to read about their exit. Now we're going to read about the Battle of Apis, where the Persians came on the scene. Right? King Cyrus, who we also is a prominent figure in the scriptures as well, dealing with our history with the rebuilding of our second temple that the Edomites burned down. Right? So just how they came into this thing with the revolt in 626 BC, we're going to read about their fall, the Neo-Babylonian Empire's fall, roughly 85 to 90 years later, with the Battle of Apis in 539 BC. Right? So this is the Battle of Apis. It's madness. Everywhere I go, I got to see an Edomite. Yeah. Let me just scroll down. Everywhere I go, you got to see an Edomite somewhere. You won't get no peace here, Jake.
At all.
Right? This is the Battle of Apis. And it says was a major battle fought from September 25th to September 28th. It's a 3-day battle in 539 when the Persian king Cyrus the Great decisively defeated the army of the king Nabonidus of Babylonia at Apis, right? It was north of Babylon. Apis was north of Babylon. So Apis would have been somewhere over here, north of Babylon. We got Shusha, Mordecai, and Esther, right? But it would have been a little bit north of here. All right, let's go back to that. Now, like I said, this is the Battle of Apis, Nabonidus. Right, Nabonidus, 539. Right, Belshazzar co-reigned while his father was long absent from Babylon. So, we read about Belshazzar and Nabonidus, really during the time of Daniel, right, in the book of Daniel. But not to kind of digress on the point, he defeated him following his conquest of Lydia. Cyrus, right? Because remember, who did he take down before Babylon? He took down Lydia. This goes into the prophecy of Daniel, the 7th chapter. See, you got it. You want to read it? You want to bring it up?
Yeah, I can read it. You can break it down if you want. This Daniel chapter 7 and verse number 5. It says, and behold, another beast, a second, like to a bear, and it raised up itself on one side, and it had 3 ribs in the mouth of it, between the teeth of it. And they said thus unto it, arise, devour much flesh.
This is talking about the Persians. This is this bear. This is after the lion. The lion is talking about in verse 4 is the Babylonians, right? Now, when we get into another beast, this is talking about the Persians. This is the coming into the Achaemenid Empire, the Persian Empire. What does it mean that it raised up itself on one side? Because the Persians was a joint empire with the Medes. But what happened was, when you go into the history, Sire Axes or Astyages, that's his name, Astyages, the last king of the Median Empire, was actually the grandfather of Cyrus the Great. And Cyrus the Great overthrew his grandfather, when you go into the history, to bring the bear and to lift itself up on one side. That's why the Persians took control of the Medes, because Cyrus overthrew his grandfather for the kingdom. And it says it had 3 ribs in his mouth, of it between the teeth. What are the 3 ribs? What were the 3 main empires that Cyrus the Great took down, all the way down to Cambyses II? Right? You had the Lydian Empire, which he took down in 547 BC. Right? That's why it says, following the conquest, had previously been allied to Lydian King Croesus before Lydia's downfall. Let me see where I want it. Right here. Right, and it says Cyrus refocused his attention on Mesopotamia. Following his conquest of Lydia, because in 547 BC he took down the Lydian Empire. Cyrus refocused his attention on Mesopotamia to the south as the powerful Neo-Babylonian Empire. The Battle of Apis, that is this empire in 539 BC. That is that second rib that was in his mouth. 547, you had 539 Babylon, and then you had Cambyses II in 525, 522 BC, where he took down the Egyptians in the Battle of Pelusium. So you had the Egyptians, you had the Lydians, you had the Babylonians. These are the 3 ribs in his mouth that devoured much flesh. All right. So let's go back to this. Now we're talking about the second rib, though. We're talking about the Babylonians at this point, right? In the Battle of Apis. And we're going to get the scriptures. And it says, had previously been ally of the Lydian king Croesus before Lydia's downfall. Cyrus went to war with Babylonia in 540 BC, and in September 539. His army met the army of the Babylonian king Nabonidus and his crown prince Belshazzar at the city of Apis along the Tigris River. In the ensuing battle, the Persians destroyed the Babylonian army, and the Persians acquired an immense haul of booty and massacred those who attempted to resist. The Babylonian defeat at Apis led to a revolt breaking out in Akkad, and Nabonidus won his last victory when he crushed the uprising. However, Babylonia's fall shortly afterwards led to the disposition of Nabonidus and the rise of the Persian Empire as the dominant power in the so-called Middle East. And that's what we just read in Daniel, the 7th chapter. Now, I'm going to give one precept that you got it, King. Now, let's go to Isaiah 13:1. Isaiah, even before the Babylonians came into power, the Lord already talked about the destruction of Babylon.
All right.
See that? The Lord declared the end from the beginning. All right, this is Isaiah chapter 13, verse 1 in the NLT. Right? This is going into the Battle of Apis. Isaiah, the son of Amos, received this message concerning the destruction of Babylon. And this is before Babylon came into power. All right, the Assyrians were ruling. Raise a signal flag on a bare hilltop, call up an army against Babylon, wave your hand to encourage them as they marched into the palaces of the high and mighty. I, the Lord, have dedicated these soldiers for this task. Yes, I have called mighty warriors to express mine anger, and they will rejoice when I am exalted. Hear the noise on the mountains. Listen as the vast armies march. It is the noise and shouting of many nations. I, the Lord of heaven's armies, has called this army together. And then when you go into it, it goes into the destruction of Babylon, right? During the Battle of Apis, when the Persians, the Medes, right? The Lord even tells you. Let me jump down to verse 17. Look, I will stir up the Medes against Babylon, that they cannot be tempted by silver or bribed with gold. The attacking armies will shoot the young men with arrows. They will have no mercy on helpless babies and will show no compassion for children. Babylon, the most glorious of kingdoms, the flower of the Chaldean pride, will be devastated like Sodom and Gomorrah when God destroyed them. So when you read Isaiah, the 13th chapter, yeah, in prophecy, we always say in prophecy is linking up with America and the destruction of this place, Babylon, America. But in context, this is actually going into the Battle of Apis, where the Persians will come and the Medes will come and destroy the Babylonians. And like I said, this is before they even came into power. And we're reading about it. The Battle of Apis. But you got it, King.
Let's go to Daniel chapter 5 and verse number 7. Actually, let's go to Daniel. I believe I'm on Daniel chapter 5. What Daniel 5 and verse 23. That's what I want. Daniel 5 and 23. Right. Are you already there? It reads, huh?
I said that's a mighty point.
It reads verse 23. It says, but has lifted up thyself against the Lord of heaven, and they have brought the vessels of the house before thee, and thou and thy lords, thy wives, and thy concubines have drunk wine in them. It says, thou hast praised the gods of silver and gold, and brass, iron, wood, and stone, which see not, nor hear, nor know. And Yahweh, in whose hand thy breath is, and whose are all thy ways, hast thou not glorified. Then was the part of thy hand sent from him, and this writing was written. Now, this is a message to Belshazzar. At the Most High, he sent the hand. I'm going to start at verse, man, this whole chapter kind of fire. I'm going to start at verse, I'm going to get the context. I'm going to just read verse 22 and I'm going to jump back down. Verse 22, and thou, his son, O Belshazzar, right? The son of Nebuchadnezzar. It says, thou hast humbled thine heart enough. Thou knewest all this. So I'm going to jump to verse 26. Now, this is a writing, right, that the Lord has shewed unto Belshazzar and prophecy and inscription the things that must happen. It says, verse 24. It says, then was part of the hand sent from him, and this writing was written. And this is the writing that was written. Many, right? Many, tiki, you farson. It says, this is the interpretation of the thing. Many, which is God hath numbered thy kingdom and finished it. Tiku, thou art weighed in the balance and art found wanting. These are writings that's written to the last reigning king of the Babylonian Empire. So as he's breaking down the writing, it's saying God hath numbered thy kingdom, your kingdom is found wanting. It says, Perez, thy kingdom is divided and given into the Medes and the Persians. So the Most High, he wrote down with a hand on the wall and inscripted heavenly language that only Daniel was able to break down on how your kingdom is going to fall by the Persians, man. And who did he write that to? The last king of the Babylonian Empire. All right, Belshazzar. And that's mighty right there. All right, Daniel then interpreted the writing. Right after that, the Persians came into power by Cyrus the Great. It says, then commanded Belshazzar, and they clothed Daniel with scarlet and put a chain of gold about his neck and made a proclamation concerning him that he should be the third ruler in the kingdom. And that night was Belshazzar, the king of the Chaldeans, slain. Dang. See, that night he was slain.
That night.
Got the interpretation. So you could go back to the so when Belshazzar gave up the ghost.
God. Yeah. Says, now we laughing at them.
Yeah, man. He got slain. He got the interpretation and got slain. So let's see, where does he get? I don't know if it's gonna say it right here. I'm gonna have to go back to that other one where
yeah. Oh, you talking about Isaiah?
No, kind of the site where it lists the different kings.
Oh yeah.
Because the year that he died, that's the same year Daniel gave that prophecy. Kind of this one. See, that's on 539 BC. So he died the same year that the Persians came into power, and that was the same year that Daniel gave that prophecy, man. 539 BC. So right after he gave up the ghost, you had the Battle of Apis kick off. And that's mighty to know the exact year that your forefathers made a specific prophecy. So
Hey,
now when you go to this, say what?
Kano, you got it. I was gonna make a point after you.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say real quick. So now when you go into the years of which kings did what and who gave up the ghost and which war was taking place, the most I put it, kind of at the spirit out there to drop the exact year where Daniel was actually given this prophecy. And not to only get a prophecy, but to have the exact date on when this man gave up the ghost, man. That's mighty right there. But you imagine prophesying on the highways and byways the downfall of your enemy, and he dropped dead right in front of you. That's only the work of the Most High, but you got it.
Khan, hey, look at when Nebuchadnezzar ruled. All right, I'm gonna make a point real quick. Look at when Nebuchadnezzar ruled in 605 to 562. So around 562. This is about 23 years, 23 or 24 years before the fall of Babylon. Now look at this. This is Daniel chapter 4. And I'm gonna start at verse. Let me start at verse number. I read it the other day. The Lord basically said the kingdom's departed from you. His empire is departed from him. And that happened 30 years. He was told this 30 years before, and the Most High had it come to pass. So just because we prophesy about America falling, day in and day out every week, but it's gonna happen. This should give you hope. If you watch it, this should give you hope to say, damn, well, these prophecies about these empires falling and these brothers have prophesied about America. Now I'm seeing how it can actually happen. It can happen because we're reading about it of old time. This Daniel 4 and 31, while the word was in the king's mouth, because remember, Nebuchadnezzar was boasting himself, right? Saying, is this not the great king, great Babylon I have built, by the might of my power and for the honor of my majesty? And while he was speaking those words, there fell a voice from heaven saying, O King Nebuchadnezzar, to thee is spoken, the kingdom is departed from you. And they shall drive thee from men, and thy dwelling with the beasts of the field. And the Lord debased them to show a point. But you got to understand, the Lord said the kingdom is departed from you. And 30 years later, where that? Got so much stuff pulled up. 30 years later, it happened. Right. The kingdom was departed from him and his descendants. So though we prophesy about America falling, World War III, that can happen. It can happen tomorrow. It can happen 2 years from now, 3 years from now. But just know it will happen. And hopefully, with things that's going on right now, it can happen in about 10 days. But these are the things when the Lord prophesied that, hey, guess what? It actually happened, and we're reading about when it happened. So this should give us hope. That's why in Romans 15:4, we pulled up at the beginning of the live, that these scriptures give us hope when we go back to and look at our fathers, man. But you can, if you want to get into this article, Kings, I think it's the last one.
Yeah. I mean, it kind of touch on the one you just read, going to the Battle of Apis. The Babylonians taking down Battle of Apis, 539 BC by Cyrus. You go to First Chronicles or Second Chronicles chapter 36.
That's the spirit I was just flipping there.
Yeah. Second Chronicles chapter 36 to see the power shift and the power change again within these different kingdoms, right? And how much history the Bible actually covers. So, I mean, it's impossible for someone to say this is a white man's book when we read all this history, concerning all these other nations. And like brothers always say, what right man lived all these years to describe out all this history? He lived from the time of Adam all the way up until now, and he just wrote everything out. And he knew everything just in part, just one man.
Yeah.
The white man. They don't know what white man is the white man.
His name is Steve.
Yeah, just some creepy Edomite. So it's madness. Nevertheless, it's the book of Second Chronicles 36 and verse number, I'm going to start at verse number 21. Start at verse 20. right? 2 Chronicles 36 and 20. It says, and them that escaped from the sword carried he away to Babylon. There, it says, where they were servants to him and his sons until the reign of the kingdom of Persia. Talking about Zedekiah and his sons, they were there until the reign of the kingdom of Persia. Why? Because the Persians came in, the Medo-Persian Empire, and the Medes was kind of just, just on the back burner of these last two kingdoms. Medes kind of held Babylon. Babylon kind of took over Babylonian Empire. You don't read about the Medes anymore. Then you got the Medo-Persian Empire where the Medes, they teamed up with Persia. Then the Persians took over the Medes again. So the Medes, they just keep trying to get up there in rulership, but nevertheless, the main empire that kind of took place was the Achaemenic Empire, because the Persians, Lord willing, we go into it next week. Persians end up taking over the Medes. All right, the bear lifts itself up on one side. The prophecy that we just read through the Spirit. It says, verse 21, to fulfill the word of the Lord by the mouth of Jeremiah. Right, and we went all throughout Jeremiah, went all throughout Ezekiel, all throughout Isaiah, showing these different prophecies. It says, until the land had enjoyed her Sabbaths. For as long as she lay desolate, she kept Sabbath to fulfill 70 years. Now in the first year of Cyrus, king of Persia, that the word of the Lord spoken by the mouth of Jeremiah might be accomplished, the Lord stirred up the spirit of Cyrus, king of Persia, that he made a proclamation throughout all the kingdom and put it also in his writing. Now, we could say that last part for next week. Going into Cyrus, kind of put that decree out to have Israel go back to Jerusalem. I don't want to get too deep on that. Nevertheless, but that shows the shift in the power structure from Belshazzar and Nabonidus, right, 539 BC, to Cyrus, Medo-Persian Empire coming in to play and overtaking the Babylonians, and that kind of being stamped right there. So we went from Nebuchadnezzar, Nebuchadnezzar, the rest of the kings, all the way down to Belshazzar, and you see how much history is being, so what I'm looking for, recovered in from these different scholarly sources to back up the Bible. Right, but you got it.
Tom. And like I said, and like the brother said, we're going to dive into this next week through the Spirit, kind of dive into the history, dive into Cyrus, all the way down to the, Artaxerxes II, right? And all of these kings that ruled during the Persians, Lord willing. But this kind of wants to, we want to paint a picture on the lifestyle and the captivity and how gruesome it was by, the setting. When we read the Bible, we can put an image to it. You can put a date to it, right? You can put, who was talking during this time and who was also there. Okay, I know Jeremiah and Baruch was around this time as well, and Ezekiel was until a little bit after. Like, now you can kind of put it in order when you're reading the scriptures, and now it's going to be much more interesting to read instead of you just reading words you never heard of before. Nebuchadnezzar, the captain of the host. Who is that guy? Look into him, right? This is the history behind it and how our people survived during these empires and during these captivities. So the Babylonians came in through the revolt of Nineveh, or the battle of Nineveh of Assyria, right? The revolt of Babylon, and left in ashes by Cyrus the Great and Darius the Mede, right? So Lord willing, you was edified, right? We like to give our honor, glory, and praise to Yahweh by Hashem HaMashiach Malak Yahushua, Brother Zabayala,
Brother Marquas.
And we like to bid you a mighty strong shalom.
Shalom.